Evening's meeting of the School Building Committee to order. Present are, I don't see the superintendent, Jason's here, Becky's here, Jerry's here, Jay Allen not, Kate, nope, Carrie, yes, Scott, nope, Ed Stanton, Mark Furtado, Mr. Geddes, Peter, no Peter Gagne, Jeremy, Andrew, Gail Clark, no, me and Jack. Did I miss anybody?
No,
Okay.
that counts up to 10.
Okay, so we're good. All right, so what time? I called the meeting to order at 5. First of all, before we begin, I want to apologize for those of you who were on this morning's meeting. I apologize for missing it. I had a monthly department head meeting at the same point, so. So I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the March 20th, 24 meeting.
So moved.
Second. Anybody have any comments, concerns, or proposed changes to the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None, okay. All righty then. Take us away.
All right. Busy week for us, spring break. We've had quite a few crews on site. When you walked in, you probably saw that the desk is under construction. We have carpenters lined up. They were today, and they will finish up their work tomorrow, and then tapers and painters to finish up that desk area, and then we'll turn it over for FF&E to finish up that area. In the central office area, we installed the new signage. The only last item is some electrical work to get them lit up, and that'll be done by Friday. We have had the plumber on site since Monday, doing some repairs to the faucets in the gang bathrooms. And then we have also had rigs on site. They've been installing some cylinders and some access panels throughout the school, as well as taking down some temp vents out by the fields and some miscellaneous cleanup throughout the site. As our landscaper is mobilized back to site, we started with the Cafe Plaza tree replacements. So those trees were taken out, new trees are getting planted, and then the rubber will follow in those areas. As well as they started digging out the inner bus loop to prep for reseeding that area. Tomorrow and Friday, the painter will be back on site to finish touch-ups that started on Christmas break, so they just have the remaining touch-ups. We added some door frames that popped up, so we're painting a bunch of those. And then as far as the freight farm, we are completely prepped for the delivery of the unit, so we're just on hold until the unit is placed, and then we will do final connections for the electrical, heat trace, and plumbing. Once that's complete, we just have inspections before we turn it over to the school. The landscaping in that area is actually happening this week because the plants are on site. So we'll be protecting those as the riggers land that unit. As for upcoming work in the next few weeks, mostly just the landscaper on site doing sod maintenance. They will be beginning fertilizing next week, and then since we've had some good weather, we're planning on hydroseeding in the next couple weeks, the last remaining areas. There are a few areas that had some washout over the winter, some excess rain, as we all know, so they'll be patching up those areas as part of the final lawn maintenance. Any questions? Maybe the PVs? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So again, apologies for missing this morning's meeting. The solar array in the parking lot, any change? Because I was in a meeting with National Grid last week, and you may recall there was some talk about the city being part of a study of some kind with National Grid.
Correct.
I was told that this area may not be in that study anymore, and I don't know if that's affected anything that's going on with the permits or other issues, whatever's going on at the solar array, so.
We haven't heard anything about being excluded from the study. Griffin is continuing to send over any documents that National Grid has requested. They were waiting on some engineered stamp documents to continue in relation to putting in that backflow preventer so we can do commissioning on the system. Griffin has been on site this week. There's some arrays that they just wanted to retest. They didn't test quite correctly the first time that we had flip the system on. So they're just finishing up that work this week. So then we can commission the system as soon as we get the green light from National Grid.
I'm just looking at, forgive me, I'm looking at the email that I sent to, so the contact that I use at National Grid is a woman named Jean Tinlin, and I emailed her because I heard this from a consultant that we're working with, that Reed Street substation is not part of Ingrid's group study, and that may impact this solar array, and Jean's response is, there's a group study in the area, we should have formal feedback soon on if they are being pulled into the group or not. So I have no further updates on that, but just for the record.
Okay.
Paint, have there been any new paint areas, or so you're resolving the ones that existed and there's been no occurrence of new chip peeling?
Correct. Yeah, so the touch-up list that we had compiled with facilities back in December, the painters started that list over Christmas break, so they just have to finish the remainder. It's mostly on floors 3 and 4. But we did add some doorways that weren't caught the first time we did a walkthrough for the paint. So that'll be happening tomorrow and Friday.
All right. And then I understand there was discussion of more leaks this morning.
Yes.
Can you give everybody an update on the leak issue?
Yep. So let me kind of show where we're talking about. So this air handling unit, it's DOA 6. So this is the area that we noticed the leak on the 4th floor. It was a new leak. It popped up about a month ago. It was a pretty good leak, couple drops every minute. So when we looked at the roof, we couldn't find any penetrations. We determined that it is from the unit. We've had some standing water in the unit. So last week, we did a walkthrough, we being Consigli, Skanska, Consigli's quality manager, Arden, and HTC, who is the vendor of the units. We did a walk Friday morning when it was rainy and windy, so we got good conditions to see what the issues were. There was a couple units, this unit 14, which we have seen a leak in one of the classrooms recently in the past 2 weeks. And DOA 2 that had some standing water in it. The HTC rep noted that they think it's some seals that have maybe degraded over the past few years, past few years since the units have been installed. So next week they are returning starting Monday, and they are doing a wholesale review of all of the units. They will be looking at seals, door handles, tightening all of the door handles into the units, as well as some, there's some screw holes that they have noticed in the past that the manufacturer can miss some sealant on. They don't know if that is the issue, but they're going back and rechecking all of them just in case it is. So they'll be looking at all of the units starting next Monday.
Is seal degradation expected within a 2-year window?
The gaskets that go around the doors, usually 3 to 5 years, you start to replace them. It's part of regular maintenance of the units. This is a little early to start seeing that, so that's why we're kind of having them go through and replace them all. We don't blame everything on COVID, but there could have been some issues in the manufacturing process at that time. Same with the little holes that might not have been sealed.
Yeah.
It's just been an oversight, so.
Jeremy or Mark, what did the leaks look like from the inside? Did you see the volume of water?
I can't speak to that. I didn't see that.
Did you see it? Oh, Jason, I'm sorry. Jason, what did you see?
The one specifically that Ally's discussing was significantly more than we've seen in the past.
So that speaks to me more than like a leak through a small screw hole.
Yeah,
So-
when we open the unit, there's quite a bit of standing water. I would say maybe an inch in one corner of the unit. We thought it might be the intake of the unit from some wind-driven rain, and that's why we haven't seen it yet. So we have videos and pictures that we've been sharing with all the parties to make sure everyone's aware that it was a pretty significant leak. It's also odd that we haven't seen it yet. So that's why we assumed that it wasn't a roof leak, had the roofer come out, check it. It wasn't a roof leak, it's definitely in the unit. So yeah, they did say to us that water should never be in the units. So anytime we do see water in the units, there is an issue with the water tightness of the unit. So that's why we're having a wholesale look at all of them.
The good news is that the roof itself, all those
Roof
white
itself
areas,
is good.
appears to be intact and functioning correctly. It appears that it's these air handling units that's the problem, right?
Correct, yeah. And yeah, we don't know why all of a sudden, just in the past month, these are popping up all at the same time, but better now than later, so that we can get guys on site to look at all of the units.
And you said it's usually 3 to 5 years, or 4 to 5 years that we would see it. Those roof units were, I know the building's only been open we're in our second year, but those units have been up there for,
They were
3 to
placed
4
in
years
April
already.
of 2021. Yep. Yeah, so we did look at we have some drone photos from when the units were placed, so we could look at the curb conditions before they were placed. We didn't see any issues there, so it really is the unit itself. There's got to be a penetration that's just not sealed. It doesn't eliminate that it could be the intake. So we just want to get them sealed first, see if there's any more issues before we move forward.
Jason, are you seeing anything else internally that you're concerned about or you want to share with
A few
everybody?
smaller leaks that Bob and I, along with Consigli, Sal's been on site, that we've been chasing down. Most, I think really there was just one, I don't recall the room number. It looked like this little tiny
Over-
puncture.
By ACA,
No, this one was,
on the
I think
A
it
side,
was- Yeah,
over here. Yeah, so that's the rooftop unit 14 that we took a look at too, that also had water in it.
okay.
So that's what we're
So
thinking is the
it
same.
was right above it. So it
Yeah.
looked from the inside as though it was actually a puncture, but you guys probably got a better look at it than we did.
Yeah, we went up with in that ceiling with HTS when they were on site last week, and it looks like it's the same condition as the other side of the building.
Anybody else have any questions, concerns for Allison?
I do. A couple things. One, that solar array, how much electricity financially wise is that thing supposed to be generating?
I don't have an exact number. I think it's a
It's supposed
couple.
to be about 5% of our use.
It's not significant. It was put in for educational and to meet the energy code,
Yeah.
so that we didn't have to pre-rate the roof and build in a higher grade of structure on the roof and pay for that, basically not put anything on the roof. You would have paid it for nothing. So this gave us both cover in the parking lot and an educational opportunity with the electrical tech
Oh,
people.
and it also gave us lead points.
Yeah.
How come we didn't go bigger? I mean, I'm just,
There was a.
because now I'm looking at, I'm working with this
There was a-
consultant to put solar
We-
arrays at
we-
school
our
parking lots.
Our engineer from CES did a cost-benefit analysis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And came up with a number. We offered to do multiple sizes, but this is the size that was chosen by the committee.
Yeah,
All right. I mean, hindsight's
I'm trying to
20/20, I
remember-
know.
yeah, Trying to remember
Yeah.
back that far,
Yeah.
but I do remember that we looked at the cost-benefit analysis, capital cost, and
I don't know.
you also have to remember that we didn't know at one point how good the
Yeah.
bidding would come in. I mean, we did so well in the bidding that we were able to add the western fields.
You have to understand too that this cost is totally on the district because the MSBA doesn't reimburse for PVs. So this was a total direct cost to the district for the educational use of those PVs because you're not, although you're getting lead points for it, we know we're going to be silver. We're well beyond the reimbursable requirement from the MSBA for lead. But it's not reimbursable. This is totally district cost. And I think that led into some of the discussion about, okay, where are we and how much money we're going to get back from these PVs in terms of the amount of energy they're going to generate we can bill back to the utility, as opposed to how much it's going to cost us up front and what's the payback period to do that. And I think that looking at the payback for these as a total district cost this was the size we chose.
Yeah. Fair.
Yeah, part of it was also that it was an initial cost of 12% premium with the structural steel if we were to put it up on the roof. And so in that cost benefit analysis, what we were trying to determine it really was, where did it make sense to make the investment or not, and would you get a return on it? And at the time when the analysis was presented, we thought what was presented, it was pretty clear about, at that point in time, what would make the most sense to the district, whether to spend the money and not get as much of a return. So I think, at that point, we found what we all thought was, the intersecting point of, getting your benefits from it without exceeding costs where you have no return.
Yeah, no, that's very fair, and I'm forgetting that we actually own it. What we're contemplating now is leasing it to somebody else, so it's fair. I just wanted to ask the question, I was just curious. Jerry, did you have other
Yeah,
question?
the other question I had was, what's the situation with the lighting on the front of the school?
Yeah, so that lighting system, we actually had other issues with it at Sharon High School. They had the same lighting on the facade of their building. So we had a report from the vendor, and they're gonna be out to do testing and replacement of any of the lights that are having issues. It's most likely gonna be a wholesale replacement, but they're gonna do their testing first. So we have it scheduled for the beginning of May. We wanna get it completed before graduation, per Kate's request, which is fair. But we're gonna be doing that work after hours, because we're gonna have a boom lift, and we don't wanna distract students, especially Kate said there's some testing going on at the beginning of May, so that'll be early May, hopefully.
Okay, thank you.
Well, it's worth stating that they're gonna go from every single lighting fixture in unit, and they're gonna check it, and if it's not what it should be, it's gonna be replaced. So even though it's not quote-unquote a wholesale replacement, what they are going to do is verify the equipment is working as it should, and if it's not, it will be replaced.
Sorry.
Uh,
Yes, Jerry?
And then one other question, the tennis courts. I saw a lot of pictures this morning that frankly, they look like they're getting much worse. And we had a discussion at the OAC meeting this morning where I think the contractor is trying to claim that they can patch. And I know Eric from KBA was very much opposed to that, and I was very much opposed to that. We think that the thing has to be completely redone. They are just getting worse and worse. I don't know, Anjanette or Mary Ann, if you have access to Bob's pictures or not.
Is it paint or pitting? What are you talking about, Jack?
It's
Coating.
bubbling
Coating?
and pitting, and the coating is coming off.
Download those pictures?
It's delaminating. I did have a conversation after our meeting with Ally, and Ally, I don't know if you were able to catch up with Steve, but, you know,
Yeah.
I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah, so we are coming at this perspective that we want the quality to be like new. We are confirming that there's no contract language that states that they have the right to repair it before we resurface the whole courts. So we're just looking into that further. We did a few phone calls today trying to get Sports Tech to come out and look at it as soon as possible. So they're just confirming that they can come out hopefully next week to take a thorough look at this. You know, they haven't been out since they completed their work in, you know, last winter, fall. So they might come out and determine same thing, they want to resurface the whole courts, but we want to get that walk first, confirm contract language that we can't, you know, we can or cannot mandate them to redo the whole courts first. Because, you know, KBA brought up a great point that we don't want to get them out on site to make the repairs that they see fit, they get rejected, and then we have to resurface the whole courts anyway, especially because it's hard to get these guys out because they have a short season. So we're working our hardest to do it efficiently and do it the right way.
And we want to do it after the tennis season is
Correct.
over.
Yes.
So we're talking about sometime this summer when it would be
Yes.
done. I think the biggest problem was that they tried to get it in too late in the year last year, right?
Correct, yeah, that's why we're seeing that bubbling. There were some nights that the temperature dropped a little bit too low while the coating was curing. I do also want to note, your pavers are ready.
Yay!
Yeah, they've been taking.
Not my pavers, for the record, the city's pavers.
The city's pavers are ready. They've been taking out the additional ones this week.
I'm not taking them home, folks. So, yeah.
We,
Thank you, Alan.
yeah,
We
they've
had a
been
Public
taking
Works
the,
Director who did that once. He got in a lot of trouble.
they've been taking the additional ones out, but we put yours to the side, with the light tower that's left on
Perfect.
there.
Yes, we're going to totally repurpose those, so thank you for that.
Just to confirm, Jack just confirmed that the work on the tennis courts will not happen until after the season, but I just want to confirm there's no risk of injury with the surface and the condition that it's in for the
No,
athletes.
and we've had a ton of conversations with Mark Wool that it's probably going to continue to chip while while they're playing on the court. Don't worry about it. It's not going to hurt the actual surface. It's just the paint that's coming up. He's totally aware of it. He's been great to work with on making sure that we're aware of when the season's going to end and everything, because he knows this work is coming up.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, some of the pictures we saw, like, the poles that hold the net up, you could see a big area right around it, a few inches, where, you could see that the surface was gone. And so it's not a safety issue for the students, but it's not what we bargained for.
Yeah, when you said surface, I was thinking actual playing surface, not so much painting.
Yeah, it's
So
just the
painting,
paint.
I'm fine with, but I don't want
Nope,
them
this-
running over potholes or anything.
Nope, the surface is perfectly fine. I do want to note on the tennis courts, they currently have black temporary windscreens up. The final ones were delayed, shipping, they were delayed. So those will be put in the next couple weeks, and we've been working with Mark to make sure that it's not during practice time or anything like that, but they'll be Royal Attleboro blue. So
Are they blue?
they are blue.
God forbid you change the school colors. You're in big trouble. Orange is nice.
All right, anybody else? No? All right, thank you, Ally. All right, next up, and Jeanette, you're up, kid.
Send it to me.
I did to go. So for the month of March, there were a few invoices that were submitted. We had the Skanska invoice in the amount of $50,920. We had one small invoice from Briggs, that's the material testing vendor that we used. It was for $241.50, and that was for the concrete testing done at the pad at the freight farm. We anticipate maybe one more invoice from them. There's testing that's required, brake tests that are required over certain increments of time. So as soon as those are complete, we'll receive hopefully just one more invoice, and then we can close out their contract, which is awesome. KBA submitted an invoice for $48,483. That is for contract closeout. Consigli's invoice was, the amount certified was $248,909.41. That was all contract work, and that included the retainage of, for AstroTurf, which was the subcontractor. I believe, they were sub under Emmanuel?
AstroTurf?
Oh, they were their own, okay,
They were
but
their
they did the playground, there's some AstroTurf over there. Their work is 100% complete. And then the only other invoices, there was one for FedEx that the city had submitted for mailing expenses, and I believe that was just, every time we do an invoice, a hard copy has to be mailed to the MSBA, and so that was for $41.54. And I forgot to mention that AstroTurf's retainage released was $13,035.80. So overall, I did, if you look at yours here, it miscalculated, it said we're 100%, we are 99.5333% complete with billing.
It rounded.
Yeah, it did round up to 100, so, but the total invoices submitted for payment for the month of March were $348,595.45.
Thank you, Jeanette. Anybody have any comments, questions, concerns about the invoices? So I'd entertain a motion to approve and pay the bills.
Move to approve.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. All right, very good. Any parting thoughts?
Two. One is that it says the next meeting date's the 22nd, but the 15th is the third Wednesday. So is it the 15th,
Should be the 15th.
Mason? Which would also make the Municipal Building Commission May 1st then, right?
Let me check really quick. I believe it's the 15th.
I have it on my calendar as the 15th.
All right, so it'll be the 15th.
Okay. And then just the other thing, and I don't know if Mary Ann or Anjanette wants to comment, but you were telling us this morning about another school that's under construction and how much it cost.
Yes, that was me. I was telling you about Neshoba Regional High School, which is a project that we're working on with KBA and Consigli and the Skanska team, most members of the same team. And their square footage for the building is 209,000 square feet. Your square footage was 475,000 square feet. Their total project cost is 241 million, whereas your total cost was 259 million. So we can see as a result of COVID and the perfect storm of all the issues that's happened over the last 5 years has basically, they're at about $1,000 a square foot, whereas the school was built for $468 a square foot. So I think we just, in the nick of time, managed to get through this project before things went sideways in the market.
So it may be some cold comfort to the taxpayers because we still spent $260 million.
Would have been worse.
But on the other hand, you know, with the costs having doubled in such a relatively short period of time, timing is everything in life.
It is, it is. And on that note, I would entertain a motion to adjourn at 5:27.
Moved. Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, we're adjourned. See you on the 15th.
Building Commission. Good night, folks.
Order at 5:33 PM on April 17th, 2024. And for the record, everyone's here except for Gail. No, I don't see her. So we have a quorum. We need to approve the minutes of April 13th. Is there a
Those are-
motion?
Jack, so that's gonna be stricken from the record. We'll just do the minutes at the next, full
We're
meeting.
not going to approve the minutes of March 13th.
Yep, we'll do it at the next full
Okay,
meeting.
so we'll pass that. All right, then, guess that shorter one will be Anjanette. So, Anjanette, do you want to talk to us about the window wall replacement project at Willett School?
Sure. So we had originally put this out to bid for the Phase 2 of the window wall work, and we didn't get any bids. So we put it back out again, reissued it, and between Socotec and Skanska, we made a bunch of calls, tried to drum up some interest. We did receive 2 bids, and we feel like they were very, very strong numbers. They were good subcontractors. We had a bid from Lockheed, which was $185,000, and then we had a bid from J.J. Cardosi, which was $173,300. Originally, when Socotec estimated the work, they thought it would be around $150,000. And when Mason and I had talked, we had a budget in mind that carried that value plus some room for changes and whatnot. So once we went back, we got these numbers, we went back and looked at, where the increases were. So Skanska, I believe you're on the call as well, right, Mason? City of Attleboro and Socotec discussed what were some of the factors that drove up the price. Well, this was their price from last summer. And there's been inflation, there's been material increases and whatnot. So overall, we felt like the number is, the lowest number that was received is a valid bid. We're very comfortable with the number. We had the formal bid opening, Socotec, Skanska was there. We also had Brooke from the City of Attleboro present. As soon as we opened the bids, both bidders were there. We made sure that everything was there. All of their bid forms were completed, all of the certificates were included. We immediately went in and started looking at their, to see if there was anything that might raise a red flag, any kind of litigations or anything, and everything checked out. So we followed up with doing some cold calls for references for the lowest bidder, J.J. Cardosi. And after all of that, collectively with Socotec, we felt very comfortable in issuing the city a recommendation to award the work for the window wall at Willett to J.J. Cardosi in the amount of $173,300. So,
It says 330 on my piece of paper.
Yeah, it should be 300. I think that was a transposition mistake from Socotec.
yeah, 173,300 is what we had written down at the time of the bid.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, so that, we'll make sure that gets corrected.
All right.
Right,
So, I mean, technically, because we got less than 3 bids, we could reject it and go out to bid again, but we all know what will happen. Price will go up.
that's correct.
We may not get any more bidders.
And I can tell you that they're very anxious to get started. In fact, I just told Mason that as soon as we tell them to go, they'll be out here field measuring. They're anxious to get the measurements in, get the materials ordered, and then we hope to improve upon the schedule by allowing them to do that. Right now, they had originally said that we may not be able to get the materials for installation until the end of the summer. The sooner they can get that in, the better, the timing will be. So, and we'll be able to know as soon as they place the order. We'll have a better idea of when that will happen as well.
Any idea what the lead time is? 10 weeks, 20 weeks?
We had heard originally end of August, September. And that's why originally when we put this out to bid, people were afraid of the schedule. and the liquidated damages. So as soon as, that was our best guess at the time. Right now, I haven't heard that there's been any improvements on that lead time, but as soon as we get them on board, we'll certainly ask them to provide us with an updated schedule and their projections.
And how long do we think it'll take them to do the work?
We figure about a week per window wall. That's what we were scheduling. And then, of course, if there's, rain or weather conditions or whatever. So we hope, our anticipation is no more than, if there's a monsoon and we miss a week, we should wrap it up in less than a month, less than 4 weeks.
And so when does school resume?
I think the date we had set was August, I want to say August 23rd, off
Right.
the top of my head, because I believe that's when at least teachers return.
Right.
So what are we telling them that they have to, that they can go right through, or are we telling them that they have to, start at 3 o'clock in the afternoon or something?
So I believe the way we left it previously with the school department was similar to how construction went on the previous phase of the project. So we're going to be looking at after certain hours and then on weekends. That's, I think the goal is hopefully the lead times are a little bit shorter. We heard they might have been improving from when the original, when like the project originally went out to bid. Fortunately, it's just kind of, we didn't want to end up in this place again, where we're kind of bunched up on the school calendar, but I think we might be in a similar place as last year.
So they'll be working from 3 to dark
Potentially, I mean,
days and 3-day weekends and regular weekends.
potentially. And I think a lot of this will be worked out at pre-construction, when we get the contractor on site, and then they'll be able to better assess, what they can do in advance of materials being delivered, how they can sort of expedite. But I think the actual construction itself is relatively short, like a short period. So I don't think it's a lot of days, like to the point of Anjanette said, is it looks like it's about a week project. So we're looking at probably, I think, 7 to 10 days is what.
Oh, yeah, total.
So
Yeah.
it might, depending on how the days fall, holidays, weekends, it might only still take a month. But again, weather's gotten crazy, so.
And
There was a time we thought it would never rain again. And then there was a time we thought the sun would never come out.
And we can, as soon as we get them on board, we'll have a kickoff meeting, and then we can, get all of this information.
So in order for us to allow them to go out and do field measuring and stuff, is there anything that has to be in place, like insurance certificates or something? Have you talked to the solicitor about what we need to do to allow them on site? Because we certainly would like to shorten the lead time.
Well, the big thing
They can
is.
get the stuff delivered in the middle of August as opposed to the middle of September. It's certainly to our advantage.
Right, the big thing is we'd be looking for a recommendation to award from the MBC so that we can get them under contract. That's really the big,
So you want to get them under contract before they do the field measurement.
as soon as possible. Otherwise, ultimately, if you're doing work not under contract, you're doing it at your own risk.
But we're in good shape on the contract. It's probably just to fill in some blanks at this point.
Correct, but all the contract documents were included in the bid, so,
Okay, so
it's
not-
essentially, it's
Not like
plug and
that's,
play.
not like that's going to take us a month.
Right, and those are already, those documents are pre-approved by the city solicitor before they got to bid, so we
Okay,
should
good.
be able to expedite.
Questions?
How many windows are you talking total here?
It's just 2 of the window walls. If you look at it's the whole system there at the entrances.
There are 2?
There's just 2 of them, yes.
They're not going to do 2 crews at once?
We can talk about that. I'm not, that's,
Well, but if one,
Right.
if they have to leave their work so that it's inaccessible, I suppose we don't want to do both.
I think as they take it down, they'd like to just complete one rather than having 2 separate areas opened.
Okay, and somebody had mentioned talking to the fire department about the access while they're working. Did we do that?
Oh, we can make sure that we do, for sure.
Because I just want to make sure that they don't say, oh my God, what are you doing? You can't operate the school with these guys, blocking the access.
Well, if everything works out perfectly, we'll have everything complete before school
school
starts.
starts.
That's right, so fingers crossed.
Okay. Other questions? Then I guess a motion is in order to recommend to the mayor that we accept the bid of J.J. Cardosi, Inc. in the amount of $173,300.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Excellent. While you're here, Anjanette, there are a bunch of bills that relate to the Willett roof. Well, actually, they're all for you, are they?
So there's three
The
bills.
three Skanska bills.
Three for Skanska, two of which, because of the way the billing calendar works, for Skanska, they were after our initial scheduled meetings, so they just didn't make the agenda. So those have, we're looking for a ratification of those bills. And then the new bill is for services through March 17th. That's the recently submitted bill. I think all these,
So we don't need Anjanette to tell us it's okay to pay those bills. We
I
need
would say
Mason to tell us.
they're in order to pay.
Yeah, okay, so we'll deal with that when we get to the other two bills. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
All right.
All right. I think you're up, Courtney.
Did we want to start with Pawtucket?
Starting where you want.
Starting with Pawtucket. Waterline has been on site since early March. The Pawtucket side of the piping is complete as of last week. Right now, they're currently working on pouring forms for the foundation and rebar. And in the next few weeks, they will be completed with the pouring, and they'll be working on the Attleboro water main side, so the discharge piping. Building is on order, and everything's approved. So basically, everything's on order there, and they're moving right along. The contract date is through January of '25, and they are still on schedule to be finished in August.
When do you think the building will show up?
I don't have a date for it yet.
But if they're going to be finished
In
in
August, soon.
Yes, they'll need to get here soon.
Yep.
Does it come on a trailer or something?
It will. So, and I don't remember where it's coming from. It's coming out from out west, so it takes them a while to get
So
there.
this is a factory,
Yeah, it's
prefab.
prefab. Yep, it's gonna come basically all in one piece, and then they hook up the
Plug and
piping
play.
and, yep, piping and electrical.
okay. Anybody have any questions on that project?
No.
All right,
News.
PFAS.
PFAS, the temporary PFAS, again, it's still expected very, very late summer to fall this year. It'll be online. It won't be online this summer. We should be fine in the reservoir system. We're spilling everywhere, and production's just been low the last couple of years. So we should make it through the summer, and it will be available to help us fill Manchester over next winter. The ground piping is done. They've been working on the foundation. The last meeting, we talked about the VFD. There was a long lead time. Basically, it was due to the VFD enclosure and the ability to run it in manual or hand. The workaround for that is basically to skip the manual hand operation, which we would never run it that way anyway, and skip the enclosure, and it gets it back to the lead time of the rest of the station. There will be a credit that we should see by the next meeting of roughly 11,000? Correct. 11,000. There's also going to be a credit we had on the plans, there was a waste line to run across the street under the road to the east bed. Because the east bed's not going to be in use anyway, and the whole existing plant's eventually going to be demoed. The contractor is reusing an existing 2-inch recycle line that's existing to plant. And that's also going to be a credit that you'll see at the next meeting of about 5,000. I have Matt Barry here from Tater and Howard. What you have in front of you is a change order for the sizing of the PFAS vessels. When the temporary plant was designed, the original design called for 7-foot vessels with PVC internals. This was what was available at the time. Since then and since bidding, 10-foot vessels with stainless steel internals have become more readily available. The change order that you see in front of you is to switch the size of the vessels. Reasoning for this is the 7-foot vessels would work fine. They are going to be moved across the street eventually to the permanent plant. So basically, the PVC internals on, the internal piping on the vessels really isn't made to survive that move, so they would have to be gutted and replaced with stainless anyway. The 10-foot vessels just come with stainless. To basically re-gut the 7-foot that are in the plans, you're looking at about $75,000. For about double of that, we could have the 10-foot vessels with the stainless already there. And this gets more into the permanent plant. Design the way it is right now with the 7-foot vessels for the permanent plant, there are 10 pairs of PFAS removal vessels. If we went with the 10 now, it would result in only having 6 in the eventual plant, so 3 pairs versus 5. It saves money on floor space for the permanent plant. It saves money on resin turnovers for the permanent plant. It saves money on spare parts. You're looking at the savings of, what, a couple dozen valves?
At least.
With the 2 pairs of vessels that aren't needed. What am I missing, Matt? Missing something.
You'll be saving on downtime. You would have less resin change outs on the, because you have more of the smaller filters, you're changing out the resin more often. So you have less downtime with the larger filters. And there's also going to be less operator time involved as far as running the vessels. It also simplifies the overall operation because you're essentially running 3 trains of the larger vessels versus 5 trains of the smaller vessels. Really what we're trying to do with this permanent plant, the total cost of this project for the permanent water treatment plant is estimated at about $36 million right now. So what we're trying to do is really simplify everything for Courtney, for the operators. We're looking at long-term 15, 20 plus years of this plant before you have to do anything major to it. So we're trying to keep everything as simple as possible. Basically, these temporary and permanent treatment plant projects have almost merged at this point because we're trying to look at where we can save money by reusing what's in this temporary plant and trying to sort of transplant it into the permanent plant further down the road. That's kind of where we are at this point.
You mentioned a number, and it sounded like it was a larger number than the mayor sent down for the bond issue.
I think you were rounding up there.
Was I? Is it
Yeah,
30?
it's 35.
35.5?
35 and a couple
Something like that.
$100,000. I think he was rounding up.
Well, that also includes the design, which was already borrowed for separately.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to raise any concern there.
No, it's just that, when you go to the municipal council and you ask them for a large sum of money, and then you come back a short time later and say, it wasn't enough, you don't look so good.
Right.
Sure.
But we're still okay, Mason?
Yes.
Okay, good. So, change order number 1 then is for $146,637.75.
Jack, so the big thing with this change order, just so everyone's aware, this is a significant portion of the contingency for this project. So, we had a pretty long discussion with Tata and Howard and Courtney. They don't anticipate, you never anticipate things happening right throughout the course of a project, but the approach is, hey, this is, long-term, we think there's significant benefit to operating costs. We think there's benefits to costs on the permanent plant. But it does, limit the project's ability to adjust to some changes going forward. We're going to be, I want to say only was it about 30,000 remaining in contingency?
It ends up being 28.
We're at about
28,000 remaining.
28,000. So that was part of our conversation, I believe it was last week, was what kind of value engineering can we put into the temporary plant, which we're looking at about 3 to 5 years of keeping this temporary plant online until we get the permanent plant online. What can we do as far as, some of the landscaping around the temporary plant? Are there any of the finishes inside as far as some of the painting? Can we save on some of the painting and transfer that to maybe just labeling, that some things that maybe we can work with Mass DEP as far as maybe trying to save some money. I mean, that right there, those two things I mentioned, it's about $64,000. So there might be a few things there that we can work with to try to save some costs at the end and try to sort of push that back into the bank for you guys so that we can sort of get that cushion back, save a few dollars at the end. So, we're going to try to work on that with you guys and try to make sure that we're not pushing ourselves into the corner with the contingency. So, and we've had conversations with the contractor too, Bisco Building Systems. They also did Mansfield's temporary, actually permanent PFAS plant. They're familiar with these systems, so we've had extensive conversation with them too that, hey, this is going to be tight. Let's get everything out on the table, make sure we're not missing anything. All the below grade items are done, so there won't be any surprises there. All the rock removal's done, the foundation's in, the backfilling's done. The electrical conduits are in, the water main's in, so everything is basically above grade and up. The building's already been approved, it's on order. The PFAS vessels is really the last thing that is a submittal that needs to be approved and on order. So, hopefully there's really nothing that rears its head as far as surprises, that we should be kind of over the hump here.
Well, the usual suspects where change orders occur were passed.
Yes.
And you're comfortable, Courtney, with this?
I am.
Right. I mean, I think I'm comfortable because I think we're making a advantageous long-term decision. I kind of voiced my opinion to Matt and Karen when we met, that, it just makes things a little bit more difficult, and that, we just have to be really mindful when we get on site and we're starting to put this thing together, that there's not going to be funds available for significant changes. So I wanted to make sure they were really confident in what they had engineered, that other things weren't coming up. They seem pretty confident, so they know kind of the fiscally constrained environment we're going to be in throughout the duration of the project. So, again, I think we're doing this to save money long term. We're not trying to be, penny smart and pound foolish. We're trying to, for once, think about the long term play here. So I agree with the decision. I just wanted to make sure the commission fully understood kind of what, this change order means, and, the limitations it puts on us going forward. So.
Well, I'm not saying that I have any problem with it. I just
Yeah, absolutely.
want to make sure that we put on the record and that all the people who advise us are on the same page.
Question. So the 135,150 is more or less the net delta between the 7-foot, 10-foot vessels?
Correct. That's the material cost from the manufacturer.
What's the cost of the 10-foot vessels minus, what's the number that gets you to the 135,150?
So that is, if you go to the last page there, it's broken out pretty well by the manufacturer. It's basically a revised submittals. It includes all of the stainless steel upgrades associated with all the 10-foot vessels. And then basically everything associated with submittals, manufactured, delivery, basically everything associated with those 10-foot vessels.
Understand that. It's more what was the cost of the 7-foot vessels? What's the
7-foot vessels?
Is it
I wanna say
750,000 minus?
The initial cost for those 7-foot vessels was close to $1 million out of the $3 million of the total project. It's very heavy. This temporary PFAS project was very heavy upfront on the PFAS equipment.
So approximately a
It was about,
million,
it was about 900,000 for the 7-foot vessels up front.
and the new ones would be like,
So the 10-footers, you're looking at a little bit over $1 million total, if you want to look at it that way, from the 7s to the 10s.
So is it like a
It's like a
10%
it's like a
differential?
5%, somewhere between 5 to 10% increase. Once you add in the general contractor's markup, bonds, insurance, all of that stuff. Closer to 10%.
okay, that's what I was trying to gauge. Is it a big uptick to go to the larger vessels, or 10% seems?
Yep.
If it's long-term, getting where you need to be for the permanent PFAS system.
Even just, I think, the cost of maintaining the resin is really expensive and just from a budgetary perspective, so like that alone, I think, is gonna be a significant savings on the operational
Yeah,
side.
every year it's on place.
Absolutely. I mean, there's other pieces too, just the maintenance of the equipment. I think in the permanence, again, this isn't in this project, but I think in the permanent side, there's gonna be some savings square footage wise, some additional just material savings that I think we'll be able to benefit from. It's, again, it's not part of this project, but just, thinking about the long-term benefit.
Well, traditionally, we've always erred on the side of reducing operating costs by spending capital funds where it made sense. And so this follows what we have traditionally done as a commission. Did you have a question?
Yes, question. So you had mentioned that if we go the original route and we move the vessels over, it was about $75,000 to clean them, I guess, in that process when we move them to the permanent plant. Will the same sort of situation apply when if we went with the stainless vessels over there? Is there a process to clean it or anything like that, or is it just the...
So the problem with the smaller vessels was they had a PVC internal structure, which are designed, because it was designed with temporary in mind. That's like 1 or 2 uses, and then you're essentially either selling back the units or you're scrapping them, versus the larger units with the stainless steel internals are meant for a longer 20-plus year use, a longer life. So the process for that is, with these 10-footers with the stainless steel internals, that if this change order gets approved, basically those units, the resin would get removed at the temporary plant, and then those units basically get transplanted into the permanent building, and then the resin gets replaced.
But is it the equal cost as the $75,000, or is it like, $5,000? Like, are we putting that $70,000 difference is what I'm getting at in, if we buy the cheaper units and move them over, we spend $75,000 when we move them over. If we buy the more expensive units for $145,000 more, do we only have to pay $5,000 when we move them over?
Honestly, the cost of transplanting them from the temporary to the permanent building is probably going to be a wash, if not more, for the smaller, because you have 4 instead of 2. So you're almost making more trips. You're basically going to move 2 units instead of 4 units.
So is the $75,000 on the first units, is that moving them over, or is that maintenance?
That's replacing the PVC with stainless in the first place so that we can actually eventually move them to the new plant.
That's a capital cost, not so much a relocation cost.
You would have to do that regardless, right? Even without, without moving to the 10-foot diameter, you would have to replace the PVC with stainless steel at the time of moving to the permanent plant. If you didn't do this now.
Yep.
That's-
The relocation
So
cost of the vessels is kind
So
of,
spend an additional $75,000 in a couple years to upgrade them in essence, or spend $145,000 now and be done?
correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? Then I guess we need a motion to approve change order number 1 in the amount of 146,637.75.
So moved. Second.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. And last on our agenda, I think, is the permanent plant?
So the permanent plant, we should have 30% design plans next week. The plant is still expected online in late 2027. I went to council last night for the public hearing regarding the SRF funding. And again, just as a refresher, anything related in the plant to PFAS is eligible for 0% interest on the 35 million plus loan. Anything non-PFAS related, the current interest rate it's higher than 0 but less than market. The last update we got on that was 2%, and there is some percent of the loan that will be potentially forgiven. The last estimate on that was about 13%, but that'll go up and down, and it's related to the demographics of Attleboro. We're still waiting on the borrowers meeting that was supposed to be scheduled in April. Now it's going to be scheduled in May to go through how to work with the SRF. We received the pilot study from Taylor and Howard in March. We actually had no comment on it, which is unusual. Basically what we're going to end up with is a MyX resin for organics removal, and that is to handle our THM issues that we've had out in the system for a lot of years. Green sand filtration for manganese removal, and then the PFAS removal at the end of the plan.
The federal government made some headlines recently.
Yeah, they did. It gave me a long week last week.
So has that affected our design, or are they still different than the mass standards?
It has not. We still have the Massachusetts standards that, again, we have our 6 compounds, quarterly average, with a limit of 20 parts per trillion or less. EPA, their new standard fell either last Tuesday or Wednesday. And what they're looking at is 5 of the compounds that Massachusetts regulates, 2 of them with a limit of 10 parts per trillion, another 2 with a limit of 4 parts per trillion based on a rolling annual average at the plant. And then a third group of compounds that we do not we currently test for, but they're not regulated, and we haven't found any, thank goodness, of a 10 part per million limit. And then there is a hazard index, which is a ratio of another 4 compounds added together, divided by, I think it's 10,000. None of those compounds will be an issue for the design of Wading River. I wouldn't be surprised if I'm back here next year talking about West Street. But for now, the design that we're set on with Wading River will work for the new EPA regs.
Good. Before we get to the bills, any other questions?
Has there been any research or discussion about the source of the PFAS? So that wherever it's coming from, if something happens, the source doesn't produce more?
There has, we operate off of 2 separate watersheds. For the West Street plant, we're not 100% sure where it comes from. Best guess is just general runoff and septic systems that eventually make it into either the rainwater or into the reservoir itself. For the Wading River watershed, there is a landfill upstream in Plainville that is under mandated testing from DEP, and they're not really finding it in their groundwater, they're finding it in their surface water samples up there. What we would do about the landfill itself is iffy. There ends up being, just like someone can't sue the city of Attleboro for having PFAS in the water, we can't really do anything about the landfill. But I know DEP is working with them and trying to, because they're regulated as well, and trying to work on funding for the landfills. There are class action suits nationwide for DuPont, 3M, and some smaller manufacturers to try to get some of the funds back for some of these projects for communities that are, well, hurting from it like we are. The city is taking part in it, and a lot of it's client privilege, so I can't really share like what's going on in the background there.
We did join the litigation.
We did.
I was just more concerned, is the system going to be able to handle just what we're seeing now coming into the system and to get it to meet the limits, the current limits, or is it going to be designed or more? Is it going to be able to handle that without significant cost to upgrade?
It should handle it the way it stands, even if the numbers got a little bit higher. And Matt, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it may end up turning into more frequent media changeovers and things like that. It might get more costly, but the design would still be the same.
Correct. It's based on the volume of water and the concentration, which gets into bed volumes and the amount of resin in the filters, and I won't get into that, but basically you sample with these filters, you sample at 25%, 50%, 75%, and 100%. So you're sampling at various stages in the filter. And as that breaks through, you know at what point the filter is essentially spent. So that's why you have these trains, your first filter, your lead and your lag filter. So when that first filter is spent, you basically switch. So your second filter becomes your first filter now becomes your lag, your second filter, but that gets changed out while the first filter, now the second filter basically takes over as now your new lead. If those concentrations go up, you're just changing out the resin more often, but the system's basically set up as a lead and a lag through Mass DEP because it's basically a fail-safe. So it'll never actually let PFAS out into the system. It just costs more as the concentrations go up.
But in our experience, things happen at the other end. So I know with the wastewater plant, every time the permit gets renewed, they reduce the levels that they can put out. And so it wouldn't surprise me to see the federal government over time changing the allowable levels. And so are you confident that if things change, we won't have to make a significant design change?
Anything that comes out of that PFAS filter is non-detect, meaning 0. So even if those limits go from 20 to 4, it's always non-detect.
Okay.
So you're safe with that. The only difference is if for some reason the PFAS concentrations go up, you change the resin more often. We've actually seen great success with the resins versus carbon for PFAS removal. We've seen them last longer, so that's part of the reason we saw it in the pilot study too at Wading River. The resin works really well, so we have high confidence with that working well at Wading River.
Any other questions? Then we don't have anything further to approve on this project, is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, thank you. Mason, we have some bills to pay. The Pawtucket Water Interconnect, $130,000 and change. We got a police roof for $3,000 for Socotec, and we have the 3 Willett bills that you mentioned earlier, correct?
Yep, so the water line bill is largely just for mobilization, as well as some site prep work. Small invoice relative to the scale of the project. Again, just some initial site prep work. And then I think they also did some work for we previously had that change order related to the piping.
Right.
And so they did some work on the utility piping, and that's, for the amount to date, or the amount of this invoice was $136,947.81 minus the retainage, the $130,142.
And the police roof for Socotec goes back to the first of the year?
Yeah, so they sent an invoice just this week. They hadn't sent it to us previously, and as you know, that subcontract with Gibson was closed out. Our purchase order with Port Construction with Mark Zawatsky still remains open in case anything comes up. But this project's ready to be closed out. They just hadn't submitted this invoice. There's also one final invoice, so I told them, hey, get it to me. This project's closed out. So I anticipate one
You
final.
don't get us the bill, we're not going to pay it,
Right, so I don't know if they just didn't send it via mail, didn't say, I don't know, we didn't receive it. So I know they had some changeover and some staff, so, but they just sent us this one. We're still waiting on the final invoice.
Okay. So, motion is in order to approve the 5 bills.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Sounded unanimous to me. All right, so the next meeting is May 1st at City Hall. Any word from KBA on when they want to wrap up the feasibility study for public safety?
I think they were hoping for that meeting in May, so we'll check in with them, see where they're at. There was a few outstanding items. They did meet with the fire chief and the person who did the response time analysis. So I know there's some feedback on that. So I'll check in with them and see if they're going to be ready
If
for the
they need
first.
to make a presentation that's going to take some period of time, we might have to move the meeting over here because the Conservation Commission will be meeting at 6:30 that night. So stay tuned. Other than that, I think at 6:14, it's time to adjourn.
So moved. Move to adjourn.
All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.